classes. And in October, I remember it was October because the Giants were in the World Series. I believe they were playing the Angels. And it was raining, the weather was bad, it didn't look like they were going to win. And there's this park in San Francisco called Julius Kahn Park, which I think they've actually since renamed because of the history associated with the person it was named after. And so I remember one day I was walking up this hill. It's a pretty steep hill. You know, if you know Pacific Heights and Broadway and those streets, they can be a pretty, yeah, but I was in good shape then, much better shape than I'm in now. And shouldn't have been a problem, but I was having all this trouble breathing, you know, and I had this cough. I had a cough for about 3 months. And my parents, I remember, they're like, "You've had that cough for a while, and you seem to be getting worse." So I remember it was maybe a Wednesday, and I went into Kaiser to see the doctor and said, "Oh, maybe you have asthma." So he did chest x-rays, checked everything, said, "You look okay, we'll let you know if anything's wrong, you'll hear back from us by Friday." Friday comes and goes, it's Sunday, and the breathing's gotten worse. At this point, my parents have said, "You know, you should come and stay with us, I think you seem kind of sick." And it's about midnight almost, and my sister, I said, "I just can't, maybe we should go to the emergency room, you know, I don't feel well." So we arrived at the emergency room in Kaiser, and I said, "Oh, I feel better already, you know, I'm a Gemini." If anybody knows any Geminis, kind of workaholics, nothing's ever wrong, keep going, keep going, keep going. So here I am like, "Oh, everything's fine, why did I come here, you know?" So then they take my temperature, they say, "Your temperature is 102, 103. My oxygen level was 87 instead of 100, which it should have been. Then a doctor emerges and comes into the room to talk to me and says, "Hey, we have a couple questions. We did your x-ray and you have pneumonia. It's on the front and back of your lungs." She's like, "Oh, have you ever had sex with men? Are you gay? What the hell is going on?" Right? I kind of look at my sister and I don't know what's going on. She said, "We usually only see this type of pneumonia in folks with HIV, advanced HIV." And I said, "Well, I've only been with the same person for a couple of years and been in a monogamous relationship. Can't be possible." And I think in sort of telling my sister this out loud, I think, well, this has to be true. It can't be possible. And that's why, I spoke those words out loud. It couldn't be true that, I can't have it. Something surely a lot of people who've lived with HIV and AIDS or who've passed from it at one moment thought, this can't be real. This is so real. So I wait. I even call my uncle. Everybody's got a gay uncle, right? So I call my Uncle Charlie. And I say, "Oh, they say that, they think I have pneumonia." And he said, "Well, until they actually do this bronchoscopy and check, they can't really confirm if you have this PCP, pneumocystis." And so that gave me a little bit of hope. But as soon as I got off the phone with him, you could just feel these hot tears kind of coming down my face and this worry. So the next morning, a doctor comes in the room, says, "Oh, can you turn the TV off?" and says, "Sorry, we got your test results back. I'm afraid it's positive." And he explains to me, it's an AIDS diagnosis. This is an HIV. You have 35 T cells. Your viral load is 500,000 copies. And I'm like, wait, what does all this mean, right? Here I am, doing a PhD, this sort of stereotype of, oh, well, the more education we have, right, is always like, oh, people, they can't possibly get HIV, right? These people are, who have more education, quote unquote, or whatever it is, these stereotypes. So I immediately as soon as he leaves, I'm just like, kind of hysterical. My parents show up, my dad says, I kind of suspected this all along when the cough didn't go away. And then my uncle, had all these really difficult moments, right? This was 2002, so this is, as many of you know, right, a little bit after PrEP. But I still was frightened, right? I'm pretty far along. And I just kept thinking about the students, that I teach. I said, my brothers and my sisters, when I did go home, that nobody wants to see their son or their brother die. Nobody wants to see their teacher die. So these were things that crossed my mind, and a few weeks after my diagnosis, I got a card in the mail from my Uncle Charlie, and it said, because actually, let me back up. So this was late October. I go back into the doctor. I actually thought I had liver failure because they gave me Septra. So it was PCP, it was pneumocystis. And they gave me Septra, but I'm allergic to Septra. So I thought I was going into liver failure. Turns out, if it wasn't for the Septra, it would have saved my life. you know, I wouldn't have made it. So timing-wise, I mean, I was fortunate, particularly considering I was allergic to it. But, you know, I started on meds. I had a great specialist who helped a lot in that early journey. But, you know, as many of you maybe in the room know, those levels kept going up and down. And so by that January, I was ready to go back to work. And that's when my uncle sent me this card that said, "God is everywhere, even beneath the wings of a dove. Congratulations on your good health." What I felt like he was telling me in that moment, that it's going to be okay, that you can keep going. It did change the fact, though, that I was still very much afraid, and that I didn't know if I was going to finish that PhD that I was working on. I didn't know if I would see my nieces or nephews grow up. And so I said, I gotta step up and hurry up and finish this thing. So I started writing and finished up that March. Eventually, I became undetectable. I think the highest CD4 count has been around 1,100, which is, it's been good for me. I also, a few years back, had a prostate cancer diagnosis, and so it was at stage 1. But I actually, thankfully, just got some results at the end of April where they don't see the cancer anymore. So that's a blessing. One thing that I've learned, I would say, from my own journey, it's been almost 17 years now, is that, I went on to write that book, write that dissertation, and now, 6 books, and teach hundreds or thousands of students, work with so many people in the community, particularly our Native community. Wrote one book in particular recently. It was called Indian Blood, HIV and Colonial Trauma in San Francisco's Two-Spirit community. And I guess what I want to say tonight, because we all have just a little bit of time, is one thing I often share with my students or just people that I talk to when I go to different places. I've been fortunate that God put me on a journey, Creator put me on a journey. I had a prayer meeting not long after my diagnosis. Dene, Navajo medicine person, was a friend. We had a pipe ceremony, and he said, Dan said to me, and I remember his words, and I talk about this in the Indian Blood book. He said, I want you to remember that you're not the only one living with this or that's going through this. A lot of our people are, and a lot of young people in particular, and we're often invisible and not thought about in this epidemic. And he said, you can tell your story, and in doing that, you can tell the stories of the folks who can't tell their story anymore. And he said something really profound to me that I've carried with me all these years. He also said, remember your brother and your sister, that they are your best medicine. And so in that poem that I read, where I talked about radical love, a concept I talk about in the Indian Blood book, I try to emphasize that radical love and healing, we're not about cures, right? Now, yes, we're talking about getting to zero, and that's important. And yes, I'm sure everyone in the room knows that we still see in particular communities, African American, Native American, Latino, transgender communities, right, still rates very high. And that our healing comes from community, I think, ultimately. Our survival, what I would actually say was that we do more than survive. In Native communities, often we're talked about as being resilient. And I remember meeting with some people from New Zealand, Maori people, indigenous people from New Zealand, and they said, why do you Native indigenous people from these states always talk about being resilient? And many of you will probably remember this. Some audiences, I say, oh, you guys won't remember this. So you remember these plastic sort of, they would call them like pop-up dolls, but they had sand at the very bottom of them, and you'd punch them, and they'd fall down, and they'd pop right back up. They said, that's resiliency. You just get punched, and you just keep getting back up. We want to do more than be resilient, and I think, thinking all these years later for folks who are, that we're not just thriving, that I want to say that we are each other's medicine. That what I like to describe it as is thriving or thrivance. Gerald Visner, one of our well-known Native authors, talked about survivance. But even that, survival gives this sort of sense of barely just making it. And yes, sometimes it feels like that, and ultimately though, it really isn't. For me, it's about thrivance. And thrivance comes through recognizing what it is that I share with my students and I share with you tonight, and that's that you are all sacred. Has anyone ever told you that you were sacred? Would people mind raising your hand if someone ever said, you're sacred? I share that. It's interesting because I think sometimes that gets taken in a religious context, right? That we're talking about religion. And the traditions and communities I come from To be sacred means that we have a particular purpose and reason for being here, and a journey that we're on, a path that we're all on. And so that each thing that you do has a sacred purpose. Each life that you touch has a sacred purpose, particularly for those of us who have lived with HIV and AIDS all these, many years. That we have a responsibility, and that's something I learned in my journey. I think that, I could have just, went off and did my own thing, but in many ways I tell people, and they think, that's so strange, AIDS changed my life, AIDS saved my life. It's an ironic thing to kind of say. And I know that I wouldn't be the person that I am today, that I wouldn't have accomplished any of those things that I accomplished. I believe that we are set on the particular paths and journeys that we're meant to be on. And so I think I just want to sort of close with one thought and then this poem. And in Indigenous communities, we talk a lot about the notion of the seventh generation, this idea that everything that we do today has an impact on those 7 generations that will come after us. So I remember that, and I think about all those who aren't with us anymore. They're here in spirit, though, and all of us that are still here, and the work that we're doing, and that work will go a long way in ensuring that the generations that come after us will also know that they are sacred. The Indian Blood Book also taught me that there's a lot that we still need to work on, particularly around violence, and how violence has a direct correlation to HIV/AIDS rates, particularly for folks in our communities who are most vulnerable. Transgender, two-spirit people are at greater risk for violence and therefore for HIV and AIDS. So I want to end with this poem because I think it speaks to tonight. It speaks to tonight and this idea of thrivance. So the title of this poem is We Remain. No time shall pass, no secret shall remain, no night shall fall, no day shall begin. Begin without the sun pointed at your heart. Begin without the meeting of soft white pebbles, motionless and solid, yet transformative still. My rock, my stone, my ancient temple of remembering. Open, untold, and shadowed stories of remembrance. You were born at the intersection of revolution and defiance. The lines and the arches of your back and in the curves of your feet speak lifetimes of triumph. Speak songs of joy. As you enter, I begin. As I begin, you continue. And in this lake of urban forgiving, we renew once more that sacred hoop of sustenance, where hearts cross, where paths intertwine, where our journeys continue. Yakoke, thank you. May our journeys and may your journeys be beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Once again, put your hands together for Dr. Andrew. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. It wasn't long it wasn't long over a decade until the HIV epidemic in 1996 that scientists made their biggest breakthrough, yet discoveries have continued to strive in antibacterial medications and antiviral medications types dramatically improved the health of people living with HIV. Highly active antiviral therapy, also known as the HART, was also known as the HIV-related deaths and hospitalizations fell up to 80%, most overnight. It was considered the new era of the HIV epidemics. But new challenges emerged and the trajectory of HIV epidemic shifted. Those survivors of early years in the epidemics of developed science needed not adequate address the HIV HART era. We want to thank everyone for coming out tonight for the Solano AIDS Coalition's first annual long-term HIV Survivors Dinner. Tonight we have several speakers that are going to come together to share their stories and to speak with you all. Our next speaker is going to be Cecilia Chung. She is nationally recognized as an advocate for the human rights, social justice, health equality of the LGBT equality. She is a former chair of the San Francisco Human Rights. And she is currently serving on the health commissions. Cecilia has been working timelessly with the locals, nationals, and the international levels to improving access and treatments for transgender people and people living with HIV. And those areas stems for discriminations through education, policy, advocacy, and visual. Please put your hands together tonight for Cecilia Chung.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak here. When Jerry asked me to speak, I really didn't know where to begin because I felt that I've told my story so many times. And what did I actually learn from my stories? But anyway, here it goes. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and when I came to the United States, it was through family reunion visa with my parents and my sisters, and it was 1984. I moved up to San Francisco right away because I knew that I was going to find my community and a place that I would call home. And by the way, I've been in the San Francisco Bay Area since I moved up here, since the end of the 1984. And for me, a lot about what to do with my life. I thought, like I have a long future ahead of me. Although, being gay at the time, it tells me that, I'm not going to have a happy life, no matter how long I live. Because at that time, there were no protections. People were still being attacked, and people still live in secret. How did I know it's a secret? Because I was so ashamed of being who I was. I didn't even tell my parents, like what I was doing in San Francisco. And, and I used to argue, and say that, because all my friends are here. I just want to come up here to be with my friends. But actually, it's a little bit more. Because I know in San Francisco, I can find my freedom. Freedom to be myself. Freedom to live the life that, I choose to live. And freedom to really declare who I can love and who I can be. And, that's kind of like a dream come true when they finally give in and let me move up here. It wasn't easy. I had to take like 16 units of classes and also working 40 hours a week. But I couldn't really complain because I lived in a place that I love. When I graduated from college, I thought it's time for me to tell my mom, at least, that I wanted to become a woman. She didn't know what to do with that information, of course. It wasn't the first time that she knew that I dressed up. I borrowed her clothes, to go out, and to get in drag for. So it's a little bit hard to hide that. But she said, can you actually just do this after your dad goes to bed? And I say, well, then what's the point? I'm trying to live as myself. Are you trying to tell me that I don't get to be myself until, after midnight? How is it different from being in secrecy? So, because of one argument into the next argument, I moved out from the basement, which I rented. I shouldn't have moved out because they should have to evict me. I was just not smart enough at the time. And I didn't know where to go. I found the Tenderloin because that was the first place I went to I remember people say that don't go on Post Street, or like you don't know what would happen, if you like bend down and pick up a quarter. That's the first place I went when I moved up to San Francisco. And so naturally, that was the first place that I thought of returning to, like when I have no place to go, because I knew I could find somewhere, someone who would accept me for who I was. And I did. But it wasn't really as pretty as it sounds, because the community that I found was the transgender community, dancing their way, flirting with all the patrons coming in and trying to make a living by doing sex work or other underground economy. I tested HIV positive, and I thought that was the end of my world. You see, I was also Catholic, I was Chinese, and and so all these guilt just fall on me, and I thought I must have pissed off God, and that I'm gonna go to hell when I die. And I picked up the phone, I called my mom. Yes, I had to pick up the phone because we didn't have cell phone yet. And told my mom, I apologized to my mom, and telling my mom that I would not be able to be there for her in the twilight days, because I might die before they do. And that was the first time and the only time in 5 years that I talked about HIV. I didn't really talk to anybody about HIV for the following 5 years, because I didn't know how to. It was still, I don't know how many people remember those images that we see, in the news and the newspaper, of people with covered with lesions, that look like skeleton just before they died. I was preparing myself to look like that, because there was no cure and there was no antiretroviral therapy at that time yet. I read a lot about the research. I guess, in the pit of my despair, I still trying to find some light by doing my own education and my own research. It was a lot harder to do research when you don't have Google, let me tell you. And you have to rely on whatever materials that you can get in your hands, and to really learn about the newest clinical trial, what clinical trial to sign up, and what are some of the alternatives to Western medicines that you can try. What kind of herbs you can take, and what kind of ritual you can do, and what kind of vitamins do you have to take. It was a full-time job and a half. And throughout that time, I was also doing sex work. I was also trying to keep up with that life by doing a lot of drugs. So needless to say, I can save a dime. And more than that, I really experienced what spiral down really feel like. My world shrunk so fast that by the end of my 10 days, I could not get out of my own apartment. It used to be a little bit bigger. It used to be at a 3 blocks radius. And then it shrunk. And then it shrunk even more. And at the end, the kind of sex work that I do was I have to rely on regular customers, regular clients, and occasionally going down the street and trying to catch a new driver by and bring them up to my house. That's when things changed. It was in August, one night, I was just about ready to go home after not really making any money on the street. And 2 guys grabbed me, got me into their car, and the car took off. I didn't know what to do. I thought, oh shit, I'm sorry, this is if I don't do something now, I might not be able to survive that night. So I fought, I screamed, and I kept threatening them and asking them to let me get off the car. But 2 seconds later, I realized we were on the freeway already. And then 15 minutes later, we were in a parking lot in the middle of the night in San Bruno. I didn't know it was San Bruno until I read the police report, by the way. I had no idea where I was at the time. It was dark. You know, I know it was a parking lot, but that's all I knew about it. And so I screamed, I yelled, and the driver came to my side of the door, opened the door, and charged at me. I didn't know what he was doing, so I just, as a reflex, I used my arm to block it. The next thing I remember was seeing my blood running down my whole wrist and elbow. He had a knife in his hand. I didn't even see that. I didn't feel the pain though, by the way. I think that, you know, in that moment, all I could feel was like how I can survive. That's the only thing going through my head. And they chased me around the car. I climbed up to the car. You know, I smeared the window with blood. By the way, I found out that the car belongs to his girlfriend, and it was contaminated. And so he had more than a little bit of explanation to do to his girlfriend. But that didn't really justify anything. It didn't justify my pain. It didn't justify my fear. It definitely just doesn't justify the repeated nightmare that I got, you know, like the 10 years after that incident. But I learned something that night. HIV might not kill me. Like, these bad choices that I made just to survive might kill me first. What I thought was survival was actually, you know, the worst poison I could take for myself. Instead, I should have asked for help. Had I asked for help the first day, maybe things would be different. At least I would have a stronger support system. But at that time, it's hard to think about it that way. I don't know how to tell you, but when you're only 28 and you learn that, you know, like you have HIV and you might die within a year, your whole world changed. My world changed. You know, like, and I couldn't really like think about all the things that I haven't done yet. I could only think about how am I going to get through today so that I can wake up tomorrow. That's how I lived for many, many years. I ended up reconciling with my family. That's the good part. And after I reconciled with my family, I think that it was by the grace of God. The antiretroviral treatment protease inhibitor came out. And of course, you know, I got on the protease inhibitor and I started to nurse my health back in order, but I was still experiencing so much trauma in my life and the side effects, you know, from the medications, that it was my full-time job, just managing those side effects and managing my mental health. I didn't know how to socialize. For a long time, I had to like rely on a whole group of people. Oh, by the way, I was in a recovery program. That's actually what helped to save me, that I actually got a buffer from the place that I lived to later on I found my place. That 90 days really, really saved me because I was not alone, even though for many nights I felt like I was all by myself. But I could make the entire house to go wait at the bus stop with me so that I feel safe enough to wait for the bus and to get on. That's not the life that I've ever dreamt of for myself. You know, like when I was young, I thought, oh, maybe I can be a superstar. Maybe I'll be a teacher. Never in a million years that I thought I was gonna be a dying person with nobody around. It's not a good feeling, and I know what caused me on that journey. And so in this time of healing for me, it means that I want to do all I can to change that. It's not just about getting to zero, like Dr. Andrew said. It's really about changing the condition so that no one have to like experience this kind of trauma or this kind of experience in their life. And so that's what I've been doing. And I felt that because I'm living on borrowed time, every day that I survive, or every day that I'm thriving right now, is a gift and grace from the universe. And in order to appreciate it and to really pay it forward, I've been involved with many things, because I kept feeling like I don't have the time enough, like to do everything I could, to make a difference. Not a difference to the world, but at least make a difference to the next person who looks like me, who sounds like me, who have to go through the same path. I want to make sure that she has a better journey than I do. That's why I was really active, and we were very active to push for anti-discrimination laws in San Francisco. That's why we were very active later on to push for anti-discrimination law in the state of California. That's why we're still working as hard as we can to push for, right now it's kind of on deaf ear, but hopefully it will change, that Washington DC could hear us and to understand our struggle and our fight. But I guess that it's going to take a long time for that to happen. I might not be here to see that day. And that's where I want to come in and ask for your help. Like Dr. Andrew said, we are holding a lot of stories of friends, families, and folks we just met, those who have passed on. We hold on to their stories, and someday we have to pass our story on, because I think that this has been one hell of a battle that no one should ever forget. This is a battle where we really get to see and test human nature. This is really the battle where we can see how you feel at the pits of despair, and for those who are born with HIV, how to thrive till they can figure out their own journey. So long-term survivors come in many forms, and I think for that I have to remind myself and remind people that it wasn't just us living with HIV, but the survivors. It's our caretakers, it's our family, it's our friends who've been with us through the entire journey. They survive with us. And I think that it's time for us to really think about how to break down barriers. So it's not us and them, but as we. We can do more than any one group alone. We can do more than any one person alone. And more importantly, to liberate ourselves, we need to get rid of all these arbitrary boundaries and borders, because that's what's preventing us from getting to know one another. That's what preventing us to really become accepting and welcoming. That's what's stopping us from sharing with others our deepest thoughts and our intimate stories. So I hope this change, but this change is not going to come overnight. This change starts with me to you. And it starts with a hug, a handshake, a smile. If you can give the next transgender woman a smile when you come across them, you don't have to know who they are. At least that way they know there's still warmth in this world for them. Give them a little bit of hope. And that's what I do, and I encourage you to do the same. Because until we can figure out how to really live up to our full potential, to be accepting and welcoming. I'm not talking about tolerance. Who needs tolerance, right? We need acceptance. We don't even need you to like us, right, but at least respect us. And acknowledge our existence instead of trying to erase it. And I think that that's what I'm going to leave you with. Today, we have a really big battle, in the transgender community. We have 2 migrant sisters who lost their lives in immigrant detentions because they're HIV positive and they didn't get the care that they need. We have 8 trans women of color, actually 8 black trans women died this year from anti-trans violence that could have been avoided. We don't want everyone to turn into statistics. So I hope when you go home or when you are like going back to your job, try to learn a little bit about what our community is and find and trans-led organizations that you can support. That's the best way to help us get to 0. Getting rid of all the hate and discrimination and really show each other, human nature is about building communities and coming together instead of condemning each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celia. We appreciate it. So, the AIDS epidemic is a historical, unique epidemic. No plague in modern times has taken such a devastation or toll on the world, its health, its economy, or its welfare. We all know that June 5th is a day set aside each year to honor the long-term HIV survivors and to raise awareness for their needs, their issues, and the journey. We are taking this time this evening to recognize that 38 years ago, the CDC published its first report that would be known as the HIV/AIDS epidemic. An epidemic that during the 1980s through the 1990s was considered a death sentence. As an epidemic, and the dispersation of impacted some of the most significant citizens, such as the LGBT community. At the end of 2016, the CDC estimated that 1.1 million people in the United States were living with HIV. Another half of 1.1 million individuals of those are over the age of 50. The older and the more is that 1 in 4 have been living with HIV for over 25 years. And since 1996 or earlier, all have lived with half of their lives with HIV or AIDS. These individuals have taken the inspiration to all, or are an inspiration to all of those that are living with HIV for long term. The visuals symbolizes the resilience and the strength and the preservations. Despite being an overlooked population and facing agonizing older, aging adults, HIV, and individuals untapped resources in the community. They've earned their badges and their empathies and have created the heroism, and aging is a privilege, and surviving age is a compliment. If you think that AIDS is no longer a big deal, then you're obviously not listening. You're not seeing what's happening with our community. As we listen to our speakers tonight and reflect the HIV and the AIDS effects as natural sense of publication since January 5th, 1981, we also want to recognize that some of the things that were challenges in responding to HIV are still challenges today, including the stigmatism, the discrimination that's associated with HIV, and the Solano AIDS Coalition will continue to do its part in working to overcome those challenges and ending the HIV epidemic. We know that addressing and reducing the stigmatism is important in improving the preservation of HIV and transmissions and improving the lives and the health those that are affected behind it. Our next speaker we're going to call this evening is going to be, excuse me for a second, it's going to be Kenneth Thompson. Kenneth Thompson. He is recognized by California, Solano County, and the city of Vallejo, and the HIV/AIDS advocates. He is currently the chair member of the Solano AIDS Coalition and is working as a caregiver to those affected by HIV. He has also provided in-home care for his long-term survivors partners, Raymond Pearson, those for surviving years of passing away in the early 2019. We'll welcome you to the stage at this time.
This is not what I do. I don't stand in front and speak. I'm mostly working in the back. I want to thank you for coming. I'm glad that I see a lot of faces and people that I know, and I'm glad to see that you're here to support. Well, my name is Kenneth Thompson. I go by T-E-E. My journey began back in the 90s. I met my partner, Ramon Perez, who recently has passed in April, like almost 30 years ago. But at that time, we were not being, I would say, smart by using protection. So when we found out that in 1991, Ramon wanted me to leave him, and that was when we had just got together. And he didn't want me to be with him as he was having this virus. So I told him, no, I'm staying with you. This is, what I be committed to, and because of having the virus does not give me a reason to escape the situation. So I stayed, and in 1992, he told me, why don't you go get tested? And I already knew that I was affected, but I just didn't want to hear the words. But I went on ahead and went anyway. So when I went and got tested, the lady comes back and she says, oh, Mr. Thompson, you're negative. And I said, oh, great. So she goes, oh, wait a minute. No, you're not. You're positive. Oh, you have a nice day. You need to see someone there at the end of the corridor. And I was like, wow, where is it that you're supposed to just blurt it out and then direct it to someone else? I was looking for a little more humility, but that's not what I got. So anyway, I went back and I told Ramon, and it didn't seem to affect me as much as it did him. He was very upset and very devastated because he felt I did this, and I'm going to lose this person that I care about. Needless to say, we stayed together and we went through a few obstacles. Ramon got diagnosed with cancer, with AIDS related. And in the process of that year, which was in '96, he had 4 surgeries in a year and a half. And the last one they did, they was trying to get out these fistulas out of his bottom section, and it was a doctor who decided, since Ramon was already open, he wanted to show the students how you do some procedure. Well, in his process of doing the procedure, he had lacerated one of Ramon's veins, but he didn't know it. So they went on ahead and stitched Ramon up, and Ramon came home. And I bought him these powder blue pajamas. And from where we lived in this little studio, the biggest part of the apartment was the hallway that led to the bathroom. So Ramon had got up and he started walking to the restroom. And he turned the light on, but I was looking and it kept looking so dark in his backside. And I kept on going, and then when he turned the light on, I seen the blood. So I started calling his name, and by then he had pulled his the pajama bottoms down, and he ended up seeing the blood. So I called the ambulance, and at that time, being the person and people that we were helping those who had problems. So we was a young man that we had sleeping on the floor. We contacted his parents. They lived in Phoenix. And, the mother thanked us. And so he was a drug shooter, and he would get crazy. And the thing was, we had a rule that, if you get caught doing this or we see it, you don't meet your appointments and going to school, because he was only 16. Well, anyway, he was laying on the floor asleep. And when the paramedics came in, they went and got him and put him on the gurney. So I had to stop them. I said, no, it's this gentleman over here. And it was a lesbian that was helping, and that was a paramedic, and there was another guy, and he was straight. Well, anyway, when they went to go get Ramon, they was like, rushing in. I was frantic. And I said, I'm riding with you. So I went to step in, and the guy goes, no, you can't ride in. You have to find your own way. And we lived on Howard Street, and I needed to get to San Francisco General. Well, I couldn't get a cab because at that time, in time of hour, they thought I was a drug person, from where I was living. I lived on the 6th and Howard. So I ran all the way to the hospital. So when I got there, so when I got there, they were trying to get a hold of me. And when they said, are you Mr. Douglas? I'm yes, and I'm breathing all heavy. So they thought they were going up to admit me. I'm like, no, I'm fine. So they said, we need you to go to speak with the doctors. So the 2 doctors came out, and they told me, we need you to be in here because when we get ready to do the procedure, we don't want Mr. Perez to see, so we want you to be on his left side, right? Yes, left side. So when they turned him over, I was talking to him, and he was going, babe, did you see the men, aren't they cute, the doctors? And I was like, oh, yeah. And so as they did the procedure, it was coagulated blood coming out, and they were as big as this, as wide as this, falling onto the floor, and they were just coming out and coming out. And I had to keep myself not to get, like it was so surprised. And he was like, what's going on? What's going on? I said, oh, it's all right, it's all right. That big turd you was trying to get rid of, well, it's gone. So anyway, they ended up sewing him up, and at that time, Ramon, he was 6'2", and he was 170 pounds, but when he got sick, and then this cancer came, he went down to 97 pounds. And so anyway, he came home, and we had Christmas and all that, and New Year's came, and he was thinking he wasn't going to make it. All my friends thought he wasn't going to make it. Well, needless to say, all the ones who thought Ramon wasn't going to be here are gone, and God rest their souls. But I told Ramon, it's in God's hand, because I come from a very strong Christian family, Kojic, and my mother, my family was very supportive, so we ended up moving here like 15 years ago, and here we are thinking that we're going to make it to 30. I told him, we got to make it to 30. We can't be on 29. I have a problem with uneven numbers. So anyway, needless to say, Ramon had to give up his fight April the 24th, 2019. I didn't really want to do this, but this even had a chance to really mourn him because I've been trying to keep a roof over my head. And not because financial reasons, but other reasons. But God is you know, my soul is willing to give what it is that I need to do to keep the roof over my head, because we got two little kitties that need us, Chloe and Persistence, which we call Prissy. And they're running around looking, but first Chloe wouldn't come around me, but since Ramon has been gone and I was sleeping in bed, she loves me now. So, needless to say, I want to let you know that I end up joining with the Solano AIDS Coalition, and I told Ramon, of course, going to volunteer my services. And I gave Mario 2 weeks, and here it is, 15 years later. And we're trying to make sure that those who are living with HIV, you do not have to think that it is a death sentence, because I'm living proof. Even though Ramon lost his fight, he was living proof because he was diagnosed actually in '87. So I want to let you know that it's okay. It's okay to be HIV positive. It is okay to have AIDS. What is not is okay is we know that there's humanity there, but what we need is the humility. So I thank you for coming and listening to the stories that were told, and I enjoyed them all. I love the poems and used something else. So I want you to enjoy, and oh my goodness, who was using this? I want to thank you for coming. I want you to enjoy the food and the pastries and all the other things, and meet someone and give them a hug. And I thank you again once for coming.
HIV affects so many of us to the point where you never know who you could possibly be standing next to. I joined with Mario and the Solano AIDS Coalition as HIV is near and dear to me. My brother, my oldest brother, is a living survivor of HIV and AIDS. He was diagnosed in 1994. It is 2019 and my brother is still living strong. Our next speaker that we're going to bring out, and although the stories are touching and we love them dearly, we don't want to keep you guys all night. So I am going to start taking time and making sure that we stay on our time. So our next speaker, we're going to welcome, please, to the stage. Sorry, one second here. We're going to bring Jesse Brooks. He is currently the co-chair of the Bay Area State of Emergencies Coalition, also known as BASE. He's an advocate coalition of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation of Northern California. He is the co-chair of UCSF and CAPS Reach Community Advocates Broad. He is also the weekly columnist of the largest African-American paper in the Bay Area, the Post News Group, reaching over 80,000 readers. Put your hands together, please, for Stephen Ford.
Wow. First of all, I want to thank God, because for me to be standing up here, I feel like it's no good of my own that I was chosen, as I grew up and I partied with people that did the same thing I did. And I'm still here. So I thank God. I also want to thank the Solano AIDS Coalition for all the hard work that they do. I work in Alameda County, which has more resources, but you guys do a lot with the little resources that you do and tireless. So I want to give you a hand. Of course, I want to thank Mario, and I want to thank, I feel honored to be among all the other speakers, Cecilia, Andrew, Kenneth, everybody that's coming after me. So when I think of a long-term survivor, it kind of blows my mind. I grew up in Oakland, grew up in the hood, and I knew that I wanted to be famous. But never did I thought I would be famous for HIV. Yeah, I graduated from high school in 1979. I was my school president. I was the school president, the class president. I was very popular. And, you know, and for a long time when I think about HIV, I thought it was something I did. Like I had internal stigma and shame. Then I realized that I was just doing what young people do. I was young, dumb, and full of, you know. And so I was just out there, not thinking about HIV, because they said HIV affected white gay men. I wasn't having sex with white gay men, so it didn't affect me. It was also years of experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and I realized as I look back that I had internal homophobia because I started going to clubs, and the only way that I could get comfortable was taking a drink and taking another drink, and then I had to think about my religious background and that God didn't love me and that I was an abomination and what my family thought about being gay. So that became normal to drink. And I realized years later, I had never had sex without having alcohol. In those days, I would get tested, but I never would get my results. Like as someone said before, I already thought I had it. But I also come from a community that what you don't know won't hurt you. So I was like, I don't want to know. Because as soon as I know, I'm going to die. And that's what I saw my brother do. I saw them give him ACT and he died. I saw a lot of my friends. We would be on the dance floor one week, and then the next week, somebody would be gone. Or either someone with lipstick and it was like they got that thing. So through all that, I finally messed up. Well, my first partner, after 7 years of a tumultuous relationship, again, I was young and I was so in love. I followed him to Georgia and he got shot and killed. And here I am, 25 years old, trying to deal with that, but I hadn't told anybody I was gay, so I couldn't talk about it. And I stopped it and I started using crack. Then I fell in love again, and I thought love could save me from drugs, and it did for a while. And finally, I got into a program, and was a mandate that you get tested if you want to be in the program. So I got tested. It took 2 weeks back then, and I remember going. It was a sunny day. The birds were chirping, and I remember the lady saying, "Mr. Brooks, you are HIV positive." Immediately, the birds shut up. And I felt like I was walking in that, you know, where you walk slow in that dream, just out of body. And I went back to the place that I was recovering in, and there was some people there that were HIV positive. And they were like, "What happened?" I was like, "They told me I was positive." And they were like, "It's okay, welcome to the club." I was like, "I don't want to be in your damn club." And because back then you died. I didn't want to die. So they sent me to support groups to learn how to accept death. So I didn't go. I went once and I was like, this ain't for me. Let me go smoke crack and die like that. And I went back out there for a long, long time. So through that journey, what I know, I didn't pick to be an advocate or activist. It chose me. And I'm so honored to be who I am today. Because I get to speak for my brother. I get to speak for all those people that died and didn't have a voice. I have 13 years sober. I have hope. I found my voice. Because I thought it was a curse. And what they say, when you serve lemonade, make lemonade. When you serve lemons, make lemonade. So I make bowls of lemonade. Today I face my internal homophobia about being gay. I had to change the definition in my head because all the messages and the images I got growing up were negative. So I didn't want to be anything but gay. But today, you would want to be gay if you want to be me. Because I'm amazing, I'm awesome. Today I get to use all my gifts. Like as I grew up, people were like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I just wanted to do everything. So today, I'm a photographer, I'm a journalist, I speak. Just so much I get to use, and it's amazing. I'm a patriarch of my family.
All right.
You know, because when I recovered, you know, they tell you to go out there and do for the community. But I looked back and I saw that my family needed help. They needed a leader.
Yes.
And today, I don't do it by what I say. They're watching me and proud of me.
That's right.
And so all I have to say to, you know, people, young people today, people that are continually getting infected, that this is not a death sentence. You can turn this around. And sometimes we need a stop sign in our life for the direction that we're going. And again, I want to thank God for using me. That's all He's doing, is using me. It ain't because I'm cute. I'm cute though. It ain't because no good that I did in the world. It's because I have a job for Him to do. And I feel so honored doing it. Again, thank you all.
Wrapping up shortly, I know some of you guys have to go, and then there is dinner being served, so some of us are hungry, okay? So we're gonna get this show on the road. We have one more speaker before I bring up our dignitaries and so forth. So right now I'd like to bring Ariel Williams to the stage. Ariel is currently working on the Solano County Family Services of the Community Disease Investigator, and has been working with the HIV population as an advocate, providing education, outreach, and support. Communities and disappointing efforts in the HIV for the past 20 years. So, Ariel.
How's everybody doing? Okay, that is so neat. We are remembering tonight, right? Tonight's a dedication. How's everybody doing? I want to say a quick thank you to everyone for being here, for being a woman, being a man of your word, being here today for this remembrance, and to the Solano AIDS Coalition as well. So real quick, just with my story, I'm telling my age, but I began my career working at Planned Parenthood back in 1997. I was a 19-year-old single mom, and I just had this passion when I went to Planned Parenthood of the services that they were providing in San Francisco on Eddy Street and in Oakland on MacArthur. And when I went through my training for HIV training to be a counselor, I thought of just all of the bigotry that was out in the community, all the stigma that was out in the community, and how dare we tell people what not to do, what can they do, and what's normal in our society. And even though I was just 19 years old, I felt the pain when I would talk to the people, and especially because I am Latina and I am born in Mexico, and I came to this country as an immigrant as 5 years old. And I also saw the health disparities in the Latino community, and especially if you're gay, or if you're lesbian, being Catholic and being Latino, Latinx, it's not accepted in our community. So I also saw an opportunity to help all communities, in English and in Spanish. Because I had a gift. I felt that I had a gift that I can speak from the heart. I can actually talk to them and feel where they were coming from. But my main experience started as a victim of domestic violence and assault. And the provider was so judgmental. And I was 19. The provider asked me, you know, my test, gonorrhea and chlamydia, you're going to get this thing done. And I asked the provider, what about an HIV test? And the provider looked at me. The provider said to me, are you a sex worker?
Oh, wow. Wow.
So the judgment just immediately, so I think that also pondered in my mind and pondered in my heart that everybody needs prevention. Don't assume because of their career, don't assume of their lifestyle, but you want to educate everyone. And so from Planned Parenthood, from there I went to Brookside Clinic, and one of my old co-workers is here, and I want to remember to say hi to her. You know? So there I was the HIV manager at Brookside Community Health Center in San Pablo. And then from there my journey brought me to Solano County, where I worked as a communicable disease investigator. So it's been a long 20 years, but I can tell you the positive stories of the people that I got to meet, people that become my friends and my family. So as providers, and if we have any providers here, I want to make sure that I just communicate to all the providers, people from working from ADAP, working at the front desk, scheduling appointments, drawing your blood. Do not treat every patient as a routine patient.
Right. That's right.
Routine is a noun. Routine. Patients are not routine. Each individual has a story. Each individual has a need.
Yes.
And so that's what I've come to learn when I talk to clients, when I talk to patients. And if you do see them on the street, you hug them. You let them know they're proud of whatever changes they're making, or making the appointments, because they have barriers with transportation, with either economics, why they can't come to the appointments. So I tell the providers, don't judge. The counselors, don't judge. And they're not routine appointments. And so I just want to thank Mario for allowing me this time just to say why I'm so passionate, why I care about the community, and to make sure that Solano residents have a voice, so that we make sure that we don't lose any more funding in our programs.
Yes, right.
Okay? So thank you so much.
So research has found that overall HIV positive people have more co-infections but fewer diseases compared to HIV negative people. Furthermore, they have found that HIV positives were generally more likely to have experienced depression, social isolation, and the use of probiotic medications. These findings have impacted the policy plannings, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, genetic specialists, and others working in the fields or caring for HIV positive people as transmitted into senior years. Tonight, I really appreciate, and we all here from the Solano County AIDS Coalition appreciate you all coming, taking your Friday evening to spend time with us to learn, share, and be in one another's company. Now I'd like to bring our dignitaries up to the stage. I'd like to start, of course, with our mayor, Bob.
Sampoyan.
I'm so sorry.
Sampoyan.
Bob, come on up, the next profession. I'd also like to bring up our county supervisor, Aaron Hannigan. Hi, thank you so much. Mike Thompson, unfortunately, I believe is ill and was unable to make it this evening. So I'm going to turn over the stage to the two of you for a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
Bob and I have shared the stage before, and he's going to tell you he hates coming behind me because then he has to.
I will.
I too want to thank Mario Saucedo and the Solano AIDS Coalition for all the work that they do in helping to identify victims of AIDS and HIV and getting them into treatment. That's probably one of the hardest jobs, right, is to get people to talk, to get people to go for testing, and then to follow up with treatment. But as we heard today, there are wonderful stories of resiliency and long lives because of modern medicine. All of the speakers have been just fantastic. And I want to thank you for coming up here and sharing your stories and sharing your lives and sharing just the trials and tribulations and just the hope that you have going forward. Very inspiring to me. And I love Cecilia Chung. She made the statement, long-term survivors come in many forms. And that is so true, right? We talk about babies who are born with AIDS. We talk about heterosexual women who have AIDS, gay men, people of all colors, all sexes, all whatever mix it is. You are susceptible to the disease. So I really appreciate the fact that we're looking at folks as individuals. I thought Ariel? Yes, Areli, sorry, yes, Williams from Solano County. Thank you so much for your message, because it's so true. Everybody is very individual, and we need to realize that. I want to talk about Solano County, and as you just heard, we continue to test and treat for HIV and other STDs, and we will also provide treatment. In fact, the county has supported Solano AIDS Coalition in their efforts of outreach for several years because the work SAC does is so important to the overall health of our community, and we realize that. The county will continue to support the coalition in its mission to educate the public on the risks and prevention and treatment of HIV and AIDS. And again, I want to thank the coalition. I want to thank the speakers today. I want to thank the audience. It is a Friday night. The Warriors are playing. I hope they won. And with that, I'll defer to Mayor Sampaio, and then we have some certificates to hand out. So I'll lower the mic.
She really does do that. And after I always seem to speak after her, and I'm always reaching up here to grab the mic. But anyway, before we go much further, I would like to recognize Councilmember Robert McConnell, who's in the audience. Robert. And School Board Member John Paul. Councilmember Rosanna Berger-Oliga is in the back. Very much for being here. I was really touched by these stories. And yeah. For you to come up and share these stories of pain, of suffering, really, really takes a lot. And for all of us in this audience that listen to this tonight, those that may not ever had anything to do with AIDS, may not ever had anything to do with anybody that has had AIDS or HIV, need to sit back, need to think, need to listen to these stories and say, how can we help you? How can we reach out and shake your hand, give you a hug, say, we're with you, we pray for you, we think of you. I listened to the doctor speak. Really, really grabbed me. Each one of you has a message for all of us. Each one of you. Oh, thanks, Calvin. Each one of you has a message for all of us that says, we as a society, need to believe that one, there is a cure, that two, you are people and we have to recognize that, but more importantly, we have to share our love. That said, I want to thank Mario, the Solano AIDS Coalition, all the people that have been involved in this. Now, Mario has been doing this for a lot of years. Mario, how many years?
15, going on 16.
16? Okay.
We're going on 17, honey.
17. So, I remember very early on when he used to do this on the steps of City Hall.
Yes.
And I would come to the events, and the supervisor would, Councilor McConnell, Trustee John Fox from the school district, and others would come to the steps of City Hall to stand in solidarity with survivors. Each and every year, I thank God that you are still with us. So, with that, again, thank you so very, very much. Thank you so much for your love. But most importantly, thank you for loving. Supervisor Hannigan, what we have done here is to, and we'll give the name, in recognition, gotta put on glasses, of long-term survivors and warriors of hope. Thank you for continuing the fight against HIV/AIDS. We look forward for a future without this dreaded disease. And this is presented on today's date by the City of Vallejo to SAC, signed by me, Bob Sampine, and the Vallejo City Council.
Yeah, so there's three of them. So one from the city, one from the county, and one from the congressman. And one from my office says Certificate of Excellence. This certificate of recognition is presented to the recipient, long-term survivors, warriors of hope. Thank you for keeping the fight against HIV/AIDS for a future without AIDS. And that's dated today, signed by me. And so I guess what you can do is you can
I'll call the names.
up.
And let's do this. Why don't you go ahead and read the comments?
Oh, yeah. Okay, his is a certificate of special congressional recognition presented to the recipient in recognition of your contributions to keeping the fight against HIV/AIDS alive, given on the 7th day of June 2019 at the first annual Long-Term Survivors Night in Vallejo. So signed by Mike Thompson.
So we will begin with Dr. Andrew Gilligan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there somebody take a picture?
Yeah.
Maybe he's with us. Mayor, do you want to come?
Yes, but I'll probably drop these.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jess Brooks.
Jesse.
Jesse Brooks. Thank you, sir. Very inspirational.
That's fine, that's fine.
Kenneth B. Thompson.
He's not going to be happy.
Fawn McLeod. Dr. Conrad. Martha Shepherd.
Wow.
Martha Shepherd. special, Cecilia Chung. She had to leave? Yes, she did. Dr. Stephen Perotti. Dr. Stephen Perotti, yeah. Ramon Torres.
I'm accepting that for Yes.
But that's a good one.
Yes.
Deja G. Vince Cruz. Digna? Donna Finney. Osuna. M. Susan Deal. Ms. Deal. Crystal Miller.
We're happy to have you back.
Thank you.
Aurelie Williams. Elizabeth Codray. Elizabeth Codray. Ty Robles. Ty Robles. Shailene Williamson. Shailene Williamson. Caesar Novello. Is there a representative from Planned Parenthood? Please, come on.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you. There you go.
Thank you.
Is there a representative from Jalapenos Restaurant?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Vallejo Holistic Health Center.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this pretty much concludes our evening. Like I said, there is dinner being served, but I do want to announce.
No, I'm sorry. It's not concluded because I'm supposed to speak. Okay, so let me.
Mario, everyone, Mario.
You know what? I'm not sure that it's but it's a for well, everybody. My name is Mario Salcedo. Also the want to apologize first to, we have other representatives of our city and school, and I'd like to acknowledge that we have Mr. McConnell right here with us. Can you come, please, Mr. McConnell? Please, it's very important because, you know, we are all together, and I'm so sorry that I've been sick. Thank you so much for being here. But I want all of you here, you know, if possible. Do you want to say something?
Oh, sure.
There's one other warrior whom I wish to acknowledge this evening. In the 1990s, I was the Future Warden of Trinity Episcopal Church, whom some of you know in San Francisco. And Ruth Breaker brought to us what became the Open Hand program that fed people who were infected with AIDS when nobody else would look at them. She taught us to respect what that food and that community gave to those who came to our church. But in return, she taught us what Christianity was. We learned an awful lot. My job was to keep the city and county away from our undercoat kitchen, which we did successfully. They looked the other way. But that program grew into a very respected program in San Francisco. For those of you who may have been exposed to that program, you know what it did to the community, and it taught us an awful lot of grace and humility. So my shout out to her for this evening as well.
And also we have council member Roxana Aliga.
Good evening. For those of you that have been around a long time, like me, like in the 80s, I was new in America back then. The Filipino community has also been affected and touched by HIV/AIDS. I actually have a friend who I met back in the 80s who contracted HIV through her husband because her husband was fooling around in San Francisco, and he actually died of AIDS. But she contracted HIV, but went on and underwent treatment, and thank God for medical science and the advances in medicine, and thank God she's still around, she's alive. She actually does, I just saw her about a year ago, and she's clean, she's free of HIV. It's a miracle. And she's a Filipina, actually, and there's many in the Filipino community, and you know, not only in the Bay Area, but all around the country, and in the Philippines that have been infected by HIV/AIDS, and thank God, many of them actually are survivors. So thanks to Mario for leading this charge, and we love you here in Toledo. And wish you the very best, and continue with your mission. Your mission in life. Thank you.
We have John Fox, Vice President John Fox from the school district.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
This is very difficult for me. Back in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of the people that I worked with or had friends or even dated are no longer with us. So I just have memories of working out on the Russian River with many different people. And anyways, those are fond memories. But I want to talk about not only Vice President of the Vallejo School Board, I'm also Vice President of the Solano County School Board. And I'm also Vice Chair of Solano, a huge supporter also of Solano Pride. So I'm very busy. I want to talk about education. At Wednesday's meeting at the school board, I honored a proclamation that June is Pride Month, and the Vallejo Unified City School District made that proclamation. But that's not all. We also our school district will be flying the pride flag, the rainbow flag. There are only a few in the Bay Area: Antioch, Dublin, and I'm proud to say Vallejo. In May, the county board of school board members and superintendents got together here in Vallejo. We decided that the topic needed to be on LGBT community, on inclusiveness, on education, and making sure everyone was included at the table. Because teen suicide is the hugest, or largest, with our LGBT students. So we had a meeting May 6th here in Vallejo. Thank you, Supervisor Hannigan was there in full support. We had people there talking about laws, about curriculum that has to be taught, about just how you include everyone. So we had guest speakers talk about how they were raised with their religion, which I did too. Being from Detroit, I thought I was evil. I really did think I was evil. When I came out here in '86 to California, it's the first time I felt like I was actually a person. And ever since, I've been in California. But I still have my faith, and I don't feel evil anymore. I actually feel like what you say, we all have a calling. My calling through education is what we all need to have so that our youth know that there is protection, know that there are ways or people to talk to. If they're thinking that they don't want to live anymore, that there's people they can talk to, not just in the county programs, but counselors at school or teachers like myself. So I think we've come a far way. We have a lot farther to go. But through Mario and through all the agencies we have, if we stick together and keep fighting, get the message out there, we are going to educate more, and so that our youth will grow up and know how to protect themselves and live healthy lives. Thank you for being here tonight.
Okay, I think the food is getting ready, but I just want to thank you, Dr. Andrew, so much for joining us. I want to thank very much my friend Jesse Brooks. I want to thank Cecilia Sean. It's so many wonderful people that have been helping the Solano AIDS Coalition in here right now. But the food is getting cold, so but I want to thank Citlali from the Chamber of Commerce. And I mean, when somebody said that, somebody was telling me that food is getting cold. Okay, so you know what? I want to bring also my partner, Calvin DeVere. And I am very sentimental, and I don't want to start crying. That's why I don't want to speak about what we do. What we do, you all know because you've been seeing my work in the community for the last 16 years. So I think I don't have to say nothing about what I do. But my partner has been helping me and supporting me, and that's why we keep doing what we're doing. What we're doing is have no pay, no funding. So I ask every one of you to unite yourselves together. You know, this is very important. You know, it's not about giving condoms in the streets. It's not about any of that. You have to educate the community. You have to talk about it, because if you think that HIV is over, you know what, you're wrong. And especially right now that we have the Trump administration, when all these things are going on, the funding is going, the research is going, so we have to keep fighting, you know, with warriors of hope. I want to thank everyone that fighting against HIV/AIDS. You know what, we all want race. We all want race. So let's help each other. You know what, you keep, I keep asking for help. We need help. We need warriors like you to come and help us in the streets. Again, it's not about giving condoms. It's about educating the community. You know, we have our teenagers, we have our junior high that is always, I mean, they need, they're getting infected. That is because we are not paying attention. You know what? We are just sitting down, really, because this is the truth. I don't want to sugarcoat anything. We just compliance, and we just not want to do the work that is supposed to be done. But the ones that we do in the work, let's help us. Let's go to the events that we do. I really appreciate every one of you that are here right now. And my speech is always like this. I always say, you know what? Thanks God for all of you that are here right now. Because the ones that don't show up, maybe they don't want to be here. Maybe it was a lot of traffic, or maybe it's another excuse. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And the Solano AIDS Coalition, again, need your help. Not only just saying that you're helping, you know what I mean? Put $1 in what, put something where your mouth is. You're just not just talking. Put $1, and that way we can go out and educate the community, because we educate the community and we're doing the work that other people supposed to be doing in this county, and they're getting paid. But we are not getting paid, so let's be real. I'm talking with my heart. I've been doing it for 16 years. So, if you guys understand what I'm talking about, I mean, again, I don't have to speak. I don't have to tell you what I do. What I do is already in this town. I mark this town with the work that we're doing with my volunteers. Without these volunteers, trust me, I will not doing anything. I probably be in Hawaii resting right now. But I have wonderful volunteers for the last 16 years. Some of them are with me for 16 years. Other ones come and go, but everyone puts something in this little thing that I started 16 years ago when I moved to Vallejo, and I saw the need of HIV education and prevention, and it was nowhere. I stepped myself and I do it, and I'm going to keep doing it to the day I die. Thank you, everybody. Time for dinner, time for dinner.
Y cuando son invasivos, yo quiero montar un curva que me mire mi amor. Un payu, 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 payu. Yo quiero montar un curva que me mire mi amor. Ay, ay, ay. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy it, enjoy your dinner, and enjoy the show. Yeah. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado, me he oído entre su ancho, pero ancha y vida, y yo soy canaria, lágrimas turbinas, lágrimas tu corazón. La voz tan tierna que gracias a la vida que me ha dado nada dulce y el abecedario con las palabras que pienso declarar. La dicha del hombre que estoy amando. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado la marcha de mis pies cansados, de mis arrugas, ciudades llanas, playas y desiertos, a la casa tuya cayó tu patio. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado, me dio un corazón que agita su marco. Cuando miro el cielo humano, cuando miro al bueno tan lejos del malo, cuando miro el fondo de tus ojos claros. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado, me dio un corazón que agita su marco. Cuando miro el fruto del ser humano, cuando miro al bueno tan lejos del malo, cuando miro al fondo de tus ojos gracias a la vida que me ha dado, me ha dado la risa y me ha dado el llanto, sin destino, dicha de quebranto, los mismos materiales que forman el canto de todos que es mi propio canto. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto. Gracias a la vida, gracias a Dios, gracias a todos ustedes. Dios, por otro día más. Hoy como otro día yo seguiré tratando de ser mejor y sonreíré las cosas con amor. Buenos días a la vida, buenos días al amor. Buenos días alegría, buenos días el sol. Yo seguiré tratando de ser mejor, yo seguiré tratando. Doy gracias a Dios por otro día. Hoy como Buenos días, Señor.
I know, yeah, you know, I mean, I'm like, why do we have to include none of us, like, can,
Para quererse un beso aquí, un beso allá, el sol, la lluvia, las estrellas que matan, y una canción, un acordeón, una manantial, el río, el bosque, la montaña, un trigal. Para soñar cualquier paisaje en la ciudad, la primavera o el verano junto al mar, la calle, el campo, la taberna o el bar, un lunes o un domingo que más da, lo importante en la vida es amar, como quiera querer cada cual. ¿Qué más da, qué más da, qué más da? Lo importante en la vida es amar, como quiera querer cada cual. ¿Qué más da, qué más da, qué más da? Lo importante en la vida es amar, como quiera querer cada cual.